You're watching NHK World Newsline. The Self-Defense Forces have released a video of the number 1 through number 4 reactors at the Koike Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The video was filmed by an SDF helicopter on Wednesday. The footage shows that at the number 2 reactor, steam is rising from what appears to be a window on the eastern or coastal side and from a hole in the roof.
水蒸気、立ち上る水蒸気等も、画面上で確認できております。
The Tokyo Electric Power Company says that the operation of pumping seawater into the spent fuel rod pool has been completed on Friday. The interior of the number 1 reactor cannot be seen as its roof has caved in. Footage of the number 3 reactor building shows its roof in the upper section of the building's southern wall blown away by a hydrogen blast. Vapor can be seen wafting from gaps in the wreckage near a pool for spent nuclear fuel rods. Faint steam can also be seen rising from twisted steel framework over what might be upper part of the containment vessel. Footage of the number 4 reactor building shows that it is reduced to a steel framework near the top, with a wall on the upper part of the building's southern side torn away. Light that is apparently reflected by something on the surface of the water can be seen from openings in the roof's frame. An inside view from the southern side shows a green object that is most likely a fallen crane. This footage is the first of its kind to be released since the Self-Defense Forces have been shooting aerial images of the plant. The SDF will continue filming to help confirm the conditions at the plant. On Thursday, 3 workers at the plant were exposed to water containing unusually high levels of radioactive materials. The Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency said on Friday the water may have leaked from the number 3 reactor core.
When we look into the composition of the water, the source of the water seems to be the reactor core. Another possibility is the spent fuel, and we cannot rule out that possibility either, but I think it is more likely that the water came from the reactor core.
The 3 workers were exposed to radiation in the flooded basement of the turbine building next to the number 3 reactor building. They were transferred to the National Institute of Radiological Sciences in Chiba Prefecture on Friday. 2 of them were exposed to beta and gamma ray radiation. Doctors say the radioactive substances reached inside their bodies. But they say so far the internal symptoms are not serious enough to require special treatment. They say the 2 will be receiving similar treatment as regular burns. Tokyo Electric Power Company says 3.9 million becquerels of radioactive substances per cubic centimeter were detected in the water the 3 workers were standing in. That reading is 10,000 times higher than levels in water inside an operating nuclear reactor. Efforts to cool the 4 reactor buildings continued on Friday. TEPCO says that in the number 1 and 3 reactors, workers switched from injecting seawater to freshwater to avoid corrosion. They are also planning to use freshwater at the number 2 reactor as soon as possible. Earlier, NHK senior commentator Noriyuki Mizuno gave us his analysis of the leakage of the contaminated water at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant.
Yesterday, at the 3rd nuclear reactor's turbine building, where the workers were irradiated yesterday, radioactive material of 10,000 times the concentration of normal water was detected. What does this mean? The coolant water at the nuclear power is contacts with the fuel rods, and so it does have, to a certain extent, radioactive materials. But the level is not that high. So 10,000 times the normal means that the radioactive substances that were contained in the fuel rods leaked out due to damage or having been melted, and that water had leaked to the turbine building. So where did that water come from is the problem, whether it could be a reactor or the spent fuel storage pool. Those are the 2 places. And according to the Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency, they think that there is higher possibility for the water being leaked from the reactor itself. There's no specific specific explanation for that, but what we should pay attention to is that radioactive iodine is found. Now, this is iodine is something that comes out when the nuclear fission takes place, and its half-life is 8 days. So for the spent rods, the iodine is not included because its half-life is only 8 days. So that means the fact that there is a lot of iodine included from the water means that water from the reactor is leaking. So does that mean that the reactor is damaged? What does that mean? Well, the reactor itself is made of steel 20 centimeters thick, so it is unlikely that it had cracks in itself. But from this nuclear reactor, there's a lot of pipes to it, and in the pipes there are lots of valves as well. So due to the earthquake, the valves and some of the pipes may have cracks, and perhaps the coolant had leaked, and that may have reached the turbine building. If there is damage to the reactor and also the pipes, what will that affect the restoration operation? Well, going forward, what they have to do is to restore the coolant function, and there could be that this may impact that operation. Now, currently, they are trying to restore power to use pump to circulate water. But if there's a leak somewhere, even if the water is circulated, there could be more leaks of water from that place. Usually, if the coolant is leaked from pipes or valves, very hot steam comes out and the temperature rises there, and that will be caught by the sensor, and in the central control room you can identify where the leak is taking place. But currently the work to restore power is not yet, has been delayed, so the central control room's function has not been revitalized, as restored, so it will take some time to identify where the leak is taking place. Now, this is about the third nuclear reactor, but how about other reactors? The situation is not that good. For example, in the second reactor, a very high level of radiation of 500 millisievert is being detected, and there are some puddles of water in the first reactor as well. And so for the first and second reactors, the containment functions of the reactor may be damaged. So in addition to the restoration of cooling functions, measures should be taken to stop the leak as well.
Now, Defense Minister Toshimi Kitazawa says the U.S. military is bringing fresh water to the plant to support the cooling operation. He says the water will arrive in 3 days.
The U.S. is strongly concerned that our present water spraying operations using seawater could eventually cause equipment to seize up and corrode. And as a result, they are urging us to switch to fresh water. A U.S. military ship is presently on its way to the plant from Yokosuka. It is filled with water that we will use as a backup.
Japan's Prime Minister Naoto Kan held a news conference on Friday evening. He told reporters that the situation at the plant is still serious.
We must remain vigilant. We are trying to prevent a deterioration of the situation, and we are still not in a position where we can be optimistic. We must treat every development with the utmost care.
After the government advised people living within a 20 to 30 kilometers radius of the Fukushima plant to stay indoors, many decided to leave the area. But over 10,000 people have stayed and are growing increasingly worried. We now have a report from the city of Minamisoma in Fukushima Prefecture.
About half of Minamisoma city lies inside the 20 to 30 kilometer zone. Dr. Ryohei Takahashi runs a clinic there. After the quake, he left the city, but earlier this week he returned and reopened his clinic. Luckily, he had enough of his staff remaining. He gets about 30 patients a day, most of them elderly. This patient says it's a great help, and the doctor says it's thanks to his staff who stayed here to support him that he's been able to reopen the clinic. He says he's treated many patients here, and this will be the final job of his life. Takahashi is determined to continue seeing patients, but today the government said that it might expand the exclusion zone. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yukio Edano says it's possible that the government will expand the evacuation zone to a 30-kilometer radius from the Fukushima Daiichi plant, depending on radiation levels. He says the government has asked municipalities within the 20 to 30-kilometer radius to urge their residents to leave voluntarily and work closely with the national and prefectural governments to ensure people do leave immediately in the event of the government issuing an evacuation order. At present, people still living there are being encouraged to leave voluntarily. Asked if he will continue seeing patients, Takahashi says he wants to, but it will be impossible without his staff. NHK has contacted 8 municipalities within the 20 to 30 kilometer zone and has established that as of 2 p.m. today, there were still at least 10,339 people there. At an elementary school in Minamisoma this evening, about 150 people gathered to leave for Kusatsu town in Guma Prefecture.
This man says that he is concerned about radiation. He says he doesn't know what is going to happen from now on. This man says that his children are very small, so he wants to be on alert.
Minamisoma has encouraged people to evacuate voluntarily while continuing to do all it can to rebuild infrastructure and ensure the necessary supplies. Mayor Katsunobu Sakurai was puzzled by Edano's remarks, saying that if there is imminent danger, he will follow the government's order to evacuate residents. But he says at the moment there is insufficient information for him to do so.
Now again, NHK senior commentator Noriyuki Mizuno offers us some background about the evacuation of residents who live within 20 to 30 kilometers of the plant.
People within 20 to 30 kilometers of the plant were advised to stay indoors. But today, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yukio Edano encouraged them to leave on a voluntary basis. Why? The government assumes that efforts to put the nuclear situation under control might be prolonged, and it's going to take a longer time. With the recovery of the cooling function, it is also necessary to prevent the leak from the surroundings of the nuclear reactors, and the radiation level is very high in the area, so it's difficult to proceed with the work. And distribution of goods is already stagnant in the area where people are advised to stay indoors, so it's difficult to have access to food sufficiently. If they have to live under these circumstances for a longer time, it's going to be more inconvenient, so they were advised to leave the area on a voluntary basis outside of the 30-kilometer range. And many of the residents already left the area voluntarily, but according to an NHK survey, more than 10,000 people stay in this area still. If they are to leave the area, they should avoid a rainy day. If it's raining, radioactive substances might be in the air, so it might fall onto the body or onto the clothes. So if people decide to leave the area, they should relocate on a fine or cloudy day rather than on a rainy day.